Hello again, everybody. I'm Roger Hoover. Glad to welcome you back to the Crimson Tide Sports Network, and welcome to Crimson Drive, presented to you by Coca-Cola. We have a really busy show on this Thursday. It is July 1st, kind of the start of a new age of college athletics. Everyone's been talking about name, image, and likeness. We'll be having that conversation with the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nate Oats, for the men's basketball team coming up in just a bit. Some other college football previews with Phil Steele, and talking about Alabama Olympians as well a little bit later in the show. And we'll go ahead and get into today's headlines as we start this edition of Crimson Drive presented by Coca-Cola. Well, everybody right now is talking about Alabama men's basketball, so no better time to talk with the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nate Oats, for kind of a summer mid-season report, see how everything is going for his program as they get ready for July to continue, and we're getting closer and closer to basketball season coming up in November. But a good conversation with Nate Oats, and like we mentioned, we're starting to preview college football a lot more on the show, especially after we're done with our 2-week hiatus. We'll be talking pretty much strictly football moving forward, but Phil Steele will be joining us. He has his annual college football preview coming out, the Phil Steele Guide, so we'll talk about that with him, as well as Alabama's new swimming and diving head coach, Margo Geer. A lot of great experience for her as a collegiate swimmer, also on the national level, and now she's the head coach of the Crimson Tide program, and she'll be talking about especially Olympian Ryan White and what she has coming up this year. Alabama athletics news. We start with some great news on the academic front. 83 student athletes on the first-year academic honor roll for the SEC. Football team led all Alabama teams, 16 honorees, and rowing also had its first NCAA championship berth this past year, was next with 10. So great honors for those Crimson Tide student athletes. To be placed on this honor roll, you have to have a GPA of 3.0 or better at the time of the nominations roll in. So great to see that for so many Crimson Tide student athletes. Then on the soccer front, if you're ready to watch some soccer, even later today, Reina Reyes will play for Mexico against Team USA coming up not only today, but also on July 5th. So make sure you tune into those, as the matchup today is coming up at 6 p.m. Central. The second game will be at 4 p.m. Central, as Reina Reyes represents her home country of Mexico and the University of Alabama. Then some women's golf news. Former Crimson Tide golfer Stephanie Meadow has been named to the Ireland Olympics team, just part of all the great Olympians that are making their way to the Tokyo Games, and full rundown of that is available on RolledTide.com. But great to see that for Stephanie Meadow getting to represent Ireland, as she was selected as one of 60 women's golfers to make the Olympic Games field, checking in at number 38 in the final Olympic golf rankings. She won a national championship during her playing time at Alabama, a great All-American here at the capstone. And again, a full rundown of all of Alabama's Olympic athletes can be found online on RolledTide.com. So that's a look at the headlines. Now we get to our interview, starting with a very anticipated interview with the head coach of the Crimson Tide men's basketball team, Nate Oats. Anticipated because there's a lot of buzz on campus about some of the newcomers coming in for his basketball team, and also some players that may be leaving, like Joshua Primo, who made it official earlier today that he will forego his remaining eligibility at Alabama after playing as a freshman last year, and he will enter the NBA draft. We talk about Joshua Primo. We also talk about Jaden Shackelford coming up in this conversation with the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nate Oats. Joined now by the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide men's basketball team, Nate Oats. And Coach, how's your summer going?
Going great. I mean, able to get recruits back on campus, able to go out recruiting, see guys weren't able to do that for a long time. So to me, it's nice to be able to meet recruits in person again. So it's busy. I don't think I've had a day off in June yet. Now we're in the end of June, heading into July, and no days off, but it's good to be back busy again like that. It was last summer was good in a way. Get to spend a lot of time, with family, spend a lot of time on the lake with my daughters, and got, more of that. But it's good to get back doing the stuff you like doing, the job stuff. So it's been busy, but it's been good.
Yeah, in-person recruiting, after you mentioned last year couldn't do any of that, everything was over Zoom like this. Is there anything you'll take from virtual recruiting moving forward, or are you pretty much back to the old model now?
No, I think you're going to keep some. We just talked about that this morning as a staff, to be honest with you. Like, I think the Zooms that you did, I think you can still use that as an initial meeting. It's a lot better than a phone call. So, maybe you make the phone call initially, and then let's follow up with a Zoom and kind of show you a PowerPoint. A lot of times you got to get them engaged enough to get them to campus, and I think a Zoom, you can engage recruits a lot better than maybe just a typical phone call.
Well, not only recruits coming back on campus, but you're able to have camps at Coleman Coliseum. What was that like over the last few weeks? It was a very busy time on the floor.
No, it was great. I missed the camps. I was a high school teacher for a long time. You miss the energy the kids bring you. So you're back in camp and got kids running around and getting better, and they're fun. I think it's good. I'm enjoying having kids back on campus doing camp. So we've got a couple of them: team camp, skills camp, parent child camp, day camp one. We've had 4 camps already. I think we've got 2 left. So we're over halfway through camp season, but we got a couple left at the end of this month. So if anybody wants to sign up, I thought day camp one went great. We've got day camp 2 coming up here at the end of July.
So a lot of youngsters on the floor at Coleman Coliseum, but also some newcomers coming to your roster as well, able to work out for the first time with the Crimson Tide. We'll kind of go player by player for a second, Coach. What can you tell us, first of all, about someone else who has played at Alabama before, but he's playing for Furman, Noah Gurley?
Yeah, we couldn't guard him the first 2 times he was here when he was on Furman's team, so we figured we'd try to get him to join us. He's going to be really good for us. He's athletic. He's smart. He's skilled. He's that big that's really skilled that we're looking for. So he's looked great. He's had great leadership. He's one of the better kids on the team. Like I really like Noah. I enjoy having him on the team. I think he's going to help us a lot this year.
Another transfer comes in from Texas Tech, Namari Burnett.
Yeah, you know what? We were right down to the end with them the first time and decided to go there. And when it didn't work out, I think that shows, you know, when he didn't come here, we kept the relationship, open. We just think there's a way to handle when when you're disappointed. I was disappointed we didn't get him the first time, but now we get him the second time. I think he's more motivated this time. There's a reason he was a McDonald's All-American. He's really athletic. He makes shots. He's highly skilled. He's a really good kid. He's looked great so far this summer.
And then you have some freshmen coming in as well. All top 100 recruits. We'll start with talking about J.D. Davison.
Yeah, JD from Alabama. Everybody knows him. High-level athlete, really skilled, better passer. And I knew he could really pass, but now that he's got teammates all around him that can make plays, you see how high-level passing ability he has. And he's good. We're excited to put him and JQ in the backcourt together and see who's got a chance to stay in front of those two.
What can you tell us about Charles Bediako?
Long, athletic, big, really, really motivated to get better. He's one of the guys that every day is asking what he needs to do to get better. He's with the Canadian U19 national team right now. So we had him for the first part of summer. Then he actually worked out with the big team, like the Olympic team, the best pros for the first few days. And now he's been with the U19 team. So he's been working out with them for the last few weeks, but he'll be back at the end of the summer and it's going to really give us a presence, shot blocking, rebounding, big guy inside that maybe we haven't had, and I'm excited to use him.
How about Jason Holt?
Really starting to get more comfortable in the system. Big athletic wing that can make shots. He's shooting it at a pretty good clip. You can tell he's getting more and more comfortable in the system every day. He's got a chance to, he's got to put some weight on like most freshmen, but he's showing his shooting ability. He's got length and athleticism, which is what we're looking for in that wing spot.
A couple weeks ago, we heard the unfortunate news about James Rojas with the ACL tear. What can you tell us about the surgery and the recovery and what the next steps are for him moving into the summer and the fall?
Yeah, he just got to hit the rehab hard. He rehabbed the first time, so we're trying to get him back by SEC play. We'll see how that all goes. The surgery was successful, and he's been in rehabbing every day. I see him with Clark, and he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. Hopefully it heals up quickly, and he can get back on the floor yet for us this year.
Also, Alabama well represented at the NBA Draft Combine. What can you tell us about some of the performances we saw from Herbert Jones, John Petty, as well as Joshua Primo?
Yeah, they did great. They all had their pro day after the Combine. I think Petty's got a knee injury he's fighting through. He wasn't able to go live and 5-on-5 or do any of that stuff yet. He's just been kind of doing spot shooting. So he's got to get the knee rehab before he can go work out for teams. So a little bit unfortunate for him. Bad timing with that, but Herb's doing great. Shot it really well in their pro day. Primo's looking like he's playing his way into the first round. If that's the case, he'll probably stay in, and we're all super happy for him. I think it'll help us in recruiting in the future. A kid comes in, our system plays well, does what he needs to, and plays his way into the first round of the NBA. So all three of them are sitting in a good spot. Hopefully Herb might be able to play his way into the first round too, and if Petty can get healthy in time to work out for some teams, we're hoping he can play his way into being drafted as well.
Yeah, with Joshua Primo, when teams call you or organizations from the NBA call you and ask you about him, what do you tell them?
I mean, he's a great kid. He's 17 years old when he's playing games for us. He's young, extremely hard worker, more athletic than what he showed a lot of times. I think you saw it here and there, but just an unbelievable kid. I mean, the NBA teams are able to tell what the kids can and can't do on the video. They want to know what do they like. And to talk about him, I mean, he's a great kid. I mean, you've been around him. He's polite, respectful, hardworking, motivated, competitive, but he doesn't have any kind of an attitude. Like there's no red flags about Josh Primo. He's just a great kid.
I think we can say the same thing about Jaden Shackelford. How's the summer going for him?
Yeah, I mean, Shaq's going through the draft process, didn't get an invite to the combine, but has had some interviews and workouts with teams. And we're just pulling for him to, really do what's best for him, so I think it's been good that he's been able to go through, get the feedback. Let's find out what they're looking for to make you a pro. And if we can help turn you into pro, like let's do that. I think, he's our leading returning scorer. We like Shaq a lot. He's maybe not as long as those other three guys that got the combine invite, which, let's control. You can control. You can't control how tall you get, but let's control how tough you are, how well you handle the ball, how consistent you make shots, and let's work on the stuff the NBA would like to see more of, and let's make you a better prospect and see if we can't get you playing in there at some point in the future.
We started the interview. You told us the schedule you've had in June. May was busy as well, so there hasn't been much time, but have you tried to reflect at all on how special this past season was for Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, people talk about where it ranks, and I'm not really into all that. I wasn't here before. All I know is every year I'm here, let's try to max out our potential. I think this is a team that came pretty close to maxing out our potential. It was disappointing how we lost. We make some free throws. We beat UCLA and get to the Elite Eight and have a shot to make a Final Four, which they haven't done here in the past. I'd love to be able to help a team make the first Final Four in school history. I thought this team was right there. But yeah, I mean, it was really special. I mean, to win, we were the only high major team that won both the regular season and a conference tournament both. That's not easy to do. It says a lot about, our leadership and our character of our guys. So just to be a part of it and to be able to help, you think about those three seniors from the state of Alabama that spent 4 years here, Alex Reese, John Petty, Herb Jones, to help them achieve lifelong goals that they've had for the state of Alabama. To me, that's a special part of it. Like, when I talked to Reese and I talked to Petty and Herb, like I had a small part to do with them having a huge year for their home state. Jordan Bruner comes in, turns down. Baylor was recruiting him. Could have gone to Baylor. They won the national championship, and he comes here and really had a great time, got better. Just helping guys get better, have a great career. That's what it's about.
How excited are you to face Baylor coming up in Tuscaloosa in the Big 12 SEC Challenge this year?
I mean, I'm about playing really good teams and getting exposed and getting better. So, now that's a non-conference game. It's not your typical non-conference game because it comes in the middle of conference play with that SEC Big 12 Challenge. But, we're playing Gonzaga in Seattle, playing Houston at home, playing Baylor. We've got 3 out of the 4 Final Four teams from last year. So we're not shying away from anybody. I'm looking forward to it, even if, they're not all wins. I think they all make us better. So as long as we're getting better every game, expose our weaknesses, turn around and get better at them, and then, put ourselves in a better shot to win the SEC like that. That's what we're about.
Coach, by the time this interview comes out on Thursday afternoon, it will be July 1st, and that'll be the first day that college athletes are able to use their name, image, and likeness, get some compensation for it. Just what are your thoughts as we head into this kind of new age of NIL? And I'm sure that's something you've been talking to your team about and possibly your recruits about as well, what this could mean moving forward.
Yeah, we talked to our current teammates, talked to all the recruits that have been on campus about it, talked to parents. It's exciting. It's new. Anybody that says that they know how it's going to work is lying to you. We got all kind of figured out together. I think it's a deal where, though, like a kid like J.D. Davidson from the state of Alabama, can really, everybody knows who he is here. There's people that probably want to use him to represent their product. A kid like Javon Quinterly, a kid, you think about a kid like Herb Jones last year, if this would have been available to him, Jaden Shackelford, leading returning scorer. There's no professional sports teams in the state of Alabama. So you're a member of the Crimson Tide, like pretty well known, finished 5th in the country this year. I think it's a really good way for guys to be able to make a little bit extra money. I don't think it's going to be like a get rich quick kind of deal, though. It's going to still the best way to make money on your name, image, and likeness. Make sure you've got a great name, make sure you got a high character, make sure you're playing a high level of basketball. If you got both those going and a company finds that you can bring value to them by associating your name, image, and likeness with their company, then kids ought to be able to make some money off it. So we'll see where it takes itself from here.
Going back to your playing days, any companies that you wish you could have been partnered up with back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't that good, but you think, be like Mike, maybe be like Nate with Gatorade or something, drink a lot of, maybe just get free product instead of having to buy it at the 7-Eleven after a playing pickup on a hot summer night. Maybe I'd just take free product instead of all the big money. So maybe Nike, give me some free shoes. I don't know. Like look, there's a little dairy spot in my hometown in Watertown, Wisconsin called Mullins Dairy. Maybe I could have got a sponsor, maybe Mullins give me a free milkshake every night when I come in, put some weight on. I was skinny back in college. I could have used some free milkshakes,
That would have been a pretty good deal. No doubt about it. Well, Coach, we've really enjoyed catching up with you. And before we let you go, you mentioned this past year was such an exciting year and a big run for this Alabama program. And at the forefront in the student section each and every day, Cameron Luke Ratliff, who unfortunately passed away less than a week after the season ended. Just how shocking was that news? And what were those weeks afterwards like for you and the basketball staff and players having to deal with the loss of Luke?
Yeah, I still remember where I was at when I started getting the text that he was in the hospital, and we were having dinner in a restaurant, and Brian was texting me, Brian Hodgson had become pretty close to him and the family, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, the kid was there for all of our games. I don't think he missed a game all year. I think he was up in Indy when we were playing in the bubble, and he just got all that passion. He's what college sports is all about. I mean, you don't find those type of fans, in a lot of times in professional sports, but he's leading the student section, and he's such a special kid. I really feel sorry for his parents. He's got the brother with special needs that he was always there for. He feels sorry for, his parents, his brother, his friends from back home. It was nice that we were able to go out and spoke at the funeral, able to meet the family, express to them what he meant to our program, because he did mean a lot. I mean, for us to win the SEC regular season for the first time in a long time, we come back, we drive into Coleman, and he's there with the whole student section greeting us, getting off the bus. Like, he's got the victory cigar going, and you give him a big hug, and he's what college sports is all about. And so to have him around for this season was real special. And then not knowing that it was going to be done, so I think that makes everybody around here just value life that much more. Like, love the people around you a little bit more. Tell them you love them. Tell them how much they mean to you. Be nice to people. That's a kid that was nice to everybody that I knew of. So I think he taught us all some valuable lessons in life.
He certainly did, and there was nothing he loved more than an Alabama baseball or basketball game day with a full Coleman Coliseum. As we get closer to the season, I'm sure you got to love the idea of getting back to Coleman with all of our fans coming up this fall.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. I mean, just to think about what it would have been like this year with what we were able to pull off, if that place would have been able to have been packed. So hopefully, everybody liked the product they saw this year, and they pack the place out next year. It'd be great to put 15,000 people in Coleman for every game this year.
Coach, we're looking forward to it. Just best of luck with everything coming up this summer for you, and can't wait to catch up with you again here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. But roll Tide, and thank you for your time.
Roll Tide. Thanks, Roger. Appreciate you, man.
Again, great to visit with the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nate Oats. And since we taped that interview yesterday afternoon, the news did become official that Joshua Primo will forego the remaining eligibility he has at Alabama and stay in the NBA draft process. And it looks like he will be a first-round pick. So big congratulations to Joshua Primo on that news. It may be tough for the Crimson Tide to be without him in the short term, but in the long term, as Coach Oats said, that's a very good thing for this basketball program. Switching gears now to football. This time of the year, you go to your grocery grocery store, you go anywhere, you see all of those college football magazine previews coming up. You go to the beach, everyone's got one in their hands, and there really has been none better over the years than Phil Steele's football preview. Really dedicated team guides, team by team. As he talks about in this interview coming up, you're going to get as much conversation about some of the Group of 5 schools as you will the SEC schools. Really detailed previews coming up. So when the experts go to one college football preview, they always go to Phil Steele's, and his new college football guide is out in bookstores now. Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, also available online. PhilSteele.com. He's got some bold predictions, including number 1, Oklahoma. Number 2, Alabama. We ask him why coming up in this conversation with college football expert Phil Steele. The book they say the experts cannot do without. Phil Steele with his football guide. It's new for 2021. It is out now, and now we're pleased to be joined by Phil over the phone. And Phil, it's great to talk to you in Alabama. How's everything going?
Everything's going great, Roger. A heck of a lot better this summer than last summer at this time when we're wondering if we're even going to play football. So everything is sunshine and rainbows right now.
Well, that's certainly good to hear. And what can you tell us about the publication of the book and just all the research you did getting ready for it, how different it was compared to last year?
Yeah, a lot better this year. Last year we had some first-year head coaches who I talked to, and they said, Phil, I'd like to tell you more about the players, but I haven't met them yet. We haven't even had a spring practice. This year I got to talk to about 110 of the 130 head coaches, and everybody had full spring under their belt already and knows the players inside and out. So that was probably the biggest change, that and the fact that we're pretty sure we're going to be playing football this year, whereas last year there were some question marks at this time. And then, of course, there was the schedule changes that happened. Now, we spent about 7.5 months working on this magazine. We actually started back in November. We sent the final page to the press at the start of June, middle of June, I should say. And they're already back and out on the shelves already. It was the quickest turnaround we've ever had.
Well, that's certainly good to hear. And you mentioned you spend so much time talking with coaches. What are those meetings like? And did you have a chance to catch up with Coach Saban here at Alabama?
I did not get to talk to Coach Saban this year. And generally, and probably one of the reasons is my interviews with the coaches are a little different. It's not hi, tell me about the team. I'd send them over my 2 full pages of each team, and we go over every player on the team. They generally take about an hour to an hour and a half, and so it's a pretty in-depth and long phone conversation, but I learn a lot about the different positions for each team, learn a lot about the players, and it really helps because I'm on all the award committees out there, and I get a lot of good information from the coaches.
You certainly do, and that leads to all the detailed rankings you have of the different players. I mean, those early pages in the Phil Steele preview, we really get to know college football, and you got to be really proud of those pages, and especially how a lot of your predictions and rankings kind of stack up once we get into the season.
Yeah, that's been the big thing, and it's something I take a lot of pride in, is the accuracy of the magazine. For example, our surprise teams have done extremely well. Last year, my number 1 surprise team was Texas A&M, and the surprise team's a non-top 10 team I think can make the playoff. They're coming off a 5-loss season. Heck, they were there on Selection Sunday. It was Texas A&M or Ohio State. They almost made it the year before. The number 1 surprise team was Utah, and had they won the Pac-12 title game, they would have made the playoff. So very, very pleased with the accuracy of the magazine. But it better be that accurate if I spend 365 days working on college football, right, Roger?
Absolutely, and I was about to say, I believe you had Ohio State number 1, Alabama number 2 going into last year, or Clemson may have been there as well, but all of those teams ended up being in the mix. You got to be proud of the results from last year, especially.
Yeah, and what a year it was for Alabama, to have your number 1 receiver go down mid-season, and the guy who was the number 2 receiver at the time wins the Heisman Trophy, and your quarterback's in the mix at the end of the year with a 41-4 ratio, and offensive line wins the Joe Moore Award, and top running back wins the Top Running Back of the Year Award, and it was just a great year for Alabama last year.
Certainly was, culminating in a national championship. But that was in 2020, Phil. Now we're looking ahead to 2021, and you've previewed the season in your magazine for this year. Where does Alabama kind of fall in the preseason top 25 and the look at the SEC that you have?
Well, they will be the number 1 team in the country in the AP poll coming into the year. And all you have to do is look at the position ratings that I have for Alabama. I mean, even though they have a first-year starting quarterback in Bryce Young, I still rate him number 16 among the quarterback positions in the country. They lose their star running back, Najee Harris, but I rate the running backs number 6 in the country. They lose 2 first-round draft picks at wide receiver. Sounds familiar. Did the same thing last year. I've got him number 12 at the wide receiver position. They lose 3 starting offensive linemen, but I still rate him the 6th best offensive line in the country. And then defensively, I think, is where we're going to see the biggest improvement for Alabama. I mean, last year and the year before, they gave up 352 yards per game last year. That's high for Alabama. I don't think that's going to happen this year, even in the era of high-flying offenses. They have my number 5 rated defensive line in the country, number 1 set of linebackers in the country, number 1 set of defensive backs in the country, and then to top it off, they have my number 1 set of special teams in the country. So despite the losses, despite the fact everybody in the country this year, and to give you a little insight, Roger, when I talked to the coaches, almost every coach this year was saying, hey, this is the deepest team we've ever had. We go 3 deep in the spring. We've got experience all over the place. You look at the Pac-12, for example, Colorado's got 16 returning starters this year. That's the second fewest in the Pac-12. Everybody else got 17, 18, 19, 20 starters coming back. Bama only has 11. They're among the least experienced teams in the country, but they're still among the very most talented. So I think it's a no-brainer. Alabama will be favored in every game this year, run their favorite streak to 92, and make the playoff once again.
And I believe you have a slight edge to Oklahoma in your preseason poll. Can you tell us why that is?
Probably due to the fact that when you look at Oklahoma compared to Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State, I think Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State are 3 teams that all lost a bunch to the draft and all have inexperienced quarterbacks. Well, Oklahoma is the opposite. They've got 15 returning starters coming back. They've got a veteran quarterback, and we know what Lincoln Riley can do when he's got a veteran quarterback. 2 of them won the Heisman Trophy out of the 3 that he's had. And defensively, they're actually going to pack a defense this year, it got better last year. Last year they only gave up 351 yards per game, ironically about the same number as Alabama, but they've got 8 starters back on D. So they've got the defense, they've got the offense, they've got the easier schedule. I think when you look at Alabama, they have to play Texas A&M on the road this year. They have to play Auburn on the road this year. They'd have to get past Georgia, let's say, in the SEC title game. So it's a tough schedule for Alabama. I think Oklahoma's got a little bit clearer path, and they're a little bit more of an experienced team.
Well, with the Crimson Tide, let's take a look at the SEC. Of course, you have Alabama, of course, firmly at the top of the SEC, but who could be some challengers? First of all, from the SEC West, what are you seeing with the rest of Alabama's division, Phil?
I think there are 2 teams in the West that can challenge Alabama, and naturally, Roger, I really went out on the limb picking Alabama to win the division this year. But those 2 teams, number 1 would be Texas A&M. And A&M, their 2 weaknesses is the fact they've lost 4 starters off the offensive line, and they've got a brand-new quarterback. But I think Haynes King can put up similar stats to what Kellen Mond did last year. And talking to Coach Fisher, going over the team with him, he told me last year at the end of the year, Phil, our offensive line for next year is going to be better than this year's offensive line. And last year's offensive line was one of the top 3 in the country in the Joe Moore Award. They only have 1 starter back, but by the time they play Alabama, it'll be week 6. They'll have plenty of time to get together and gel, and I think that's going to help them. And I think A&M gets that game at home in College Station. If anybody's going to get past Alabama in the West, which is doubtful, but it would be Texas A&M. The other team that's up there is LSU, and LSU last year was the least experienced team in the country. Only 5 returning starters last year, 2 on offense, 3 on defense. Lost a boatload of players in the NFL, had some key opt-outs. This year, they're my number 2 most improved team in the country. I think they'll be back to double-digit wins this year. They do have to play Alabama on the road. They do play Texas A&M at home. They also host Florida. But I can see them getting to double-digit wins. I just don't think they're going to really challenge Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa in that game. I think the Tide wins that one.
Another team that Alabama is going to be hosting from the SEC West, the Ole Miss Rebels, certainly gave Alabama all they could handle last year in Oxford. What can you tell us about our old friend Lane Kiffin and what the Rebels may have this year?
Yeah, 42-42 in the fourth quarter. How about that? I don't think a lot of folks expected that, and that was his first year with very little spring practice. This year, 17 returning starters. Ole Miss actually has an improved defense. Now, it is nowhere near Alabama's defense, but it is much improved over last year. And offensively, Lane Kiffin's going to put some points on the board. He's got Matt Corral back at QB, Jerrion Ely, Snoop Connor, Henry Parrish at running back, a veteran offensive line. So it's your same explosive offense. I think Alabama will probably be a little more prepared for that game this year and a little more play it more towards an A-game level.
Well, last year the schedule included Georgia on the schedule for Alabama, so they had that matchup in Tuscaloosa, and then the Crimson Tide, after winning the West, met with the Florida Gators in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. This year, Alabama goes to Florida coming up in Gainesville in mid-September. No Georgia on the schedule. Could Alabama be seeing Georgia down the road in the championship, or could it be another matchup with the Gators coming up?
Yeah, I think Georgia's the team that's going to win the East this year for a couple of reasons. First of all, they're very talented. Defensively with Kirby Smart, they're always going to have one of the best defenses. I rate them number 3. And last year, J.T. Daniels took over as the starting quarterback towards the end of the year. They went from averaging 29 points per game to 37 points per game in his starts. They've got a loaded running back room, outstanding offensive line, one that I rate number 7 in the country. And then Georgia's got the schedule. I mean, they only play 3 SEC games on the road, 3 true games, and that's against Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and Auburn, which has a first-year head coach. The Florida game is, of course, in Jacksonville. Florida lost more. They only have 10 returning starters coming back. Florida's got the tougher schedule. They drop both Alabama and LSU out of the West. Georgia avoids both those teams. I think you look at Georgia's schedule this year, if they can get past Clemson in the opener, and that game looks like a toss-up right now, they'll be favored in all the rest of their games. I think an Alabama-Georgia matchup in the SEC title game could be like their previous matchups. And you go back to 2018 when they met 35-28. You go back to that playoff that they had, the overtime win for Alabama. I think that would be a very good game. Georgia's a loaded team. I rate them number 5 in the country this year.
So that could be a matchup coming up in the SEC championship game near the end of the season. But, Phil, let's talk about the beginning of the season real quick for the Crimson Tide. Starting in that same building, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, with the Miami Hurricanes. I understand you're pretty high on the Hurricanes coming into this year.
I am. And the key for Miami, they got to get Geer, their starting quarterback, back 100% healthy. Remember, he made the announcement last year, hey, I'm coming back for my extra year, and Miami fans were thrilled, and then he suffered an ACL in the bowl game. I do think he'll be close to 100%. They've got 19 returning starters coming back. I think Miami's a threat to potentially win their division this year. But last year when they stepped up with Clemson, let's say in week 4, it wasn't really much of a contest. I think that they will give Alabama a game, but I've got the Tide about a 14 to 17 point favorite in that game for the fact that I believe Miami is a much improved team, one capable of winning their division, but I don't know if they're quite ready to step up on to the Alabama level yet.
So let's look at some of the teams around college football and in the SEC that could have really good seasons. Phil, let's take a moment and talk about some individuals. I'm not sure where you had Devontae Smith in your kind of preseason rankings for a possibility of a Heisman Trophy, but any other breakout stars you see either with Alabama or we may see in the SEC that could be having their name called in New York down the road?
Yeah, I think 3 big breakout players to look at are all your first-year starting quarterbacks for the 3 big teams. DJ Uiagalelei from Clemson is a guy that's filling in the large shoes of Trevor Lawrence. He only has 2 starts under his belt. Has to be considered a Heisman favorite. Bryce Young has 0 career starts under his belt, but he's the Alabama quarterback. He's got a great surrounding cast around him. He has to be favored. And then how about C.J. Stroud of Ohio State? How about 0 career pass attempts? Yet he has to be considered a favorite if those teams all run the table. And, last year, Devontae Smith, mid-season, he's number 2 on the team in receptions until their starter goes down, and then all of a sudden he wins a Heisman. So as it proved last year, you can come out of anywhere to get the Heisman. I think some other players to watch this year would probably be a Sam Howell of North Carolina, Spencer Rattler of Oklahoma, and then De'Ara King of Miami of Florida. If he's 100% healthy, he could be potentially in the mix.
We love looking at the cover of the magazine, as you always have some breakout stars on there. In the last few years, a lot of Crimson Tide players, whether it's Tua Tagovailoa in 2019. Last year, Najee Harris. What can you tell us about the decision to put Will Anderson, one of Alabama's linebackers, on the cover?
Well, Will Anderson's a guy that impressed me with the fact that he can play both the run and get pressure on the quarterback. 7 sacks last year, 3.5 TFL, 52 tackles. He's a guy that NFL scouts are extremely high on. 6'4", 225 pounds, plays that jack linebacker position extremely well. And I think he could be a dominant force this year, especially with the cast he's got around him. You can't double team a lot of players in Alabama because they are so loaded.
They certainly are part of a really strong defense for the Crimson Tide. And Phil, we're having this conversation on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield IMG College. I understand you've had a great partnership with Learfield to help with the magazine this year.
Absolutely, and my good friends at IMG Learfield took over the printing operation. And here's the thing, Roger. In years past, we've had the magazine printed, then we had to wait about 8 days for the truck to actually get here, 8 to 10 days after we sent the last page to the press, maybe even longer than that, for the truck to get here, and then we'd start mailing them out. The folks at IMG Learfield were at the printer, and as soon as those first magazines were coming off the press, they were mailing them. It was remarkable turnaround time. Barnes & Noble started selling them probably about 1 week after we sent the last page to the press. So last page went to the press June 15th, and they're already on sale across the country. So I think they've done a wonderful job. It's a great relationship.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, I've got the 2020 edition in my hands right now that I'm showing to our folks watching on Facebook, and the 2021 editions are out now. If you could remind us again where to pick those up, and also what can you tell us about what you're offering online this season as well as the digital copy?
Well, I appreciate that, Roger. It's available right now at Barnes & Noble and Books A Million, and it's hit across the country right now. Should be available in your area. 352 pages. Pick it up. It's like picking up a book, and I guarantee it's got 3 to 4 times the amount of information in any other magazine. We give you 2 full pages on a team like Troy or UL Monroe. Same amount of coverage you get on Oklahoma and Alabama. So that's at Barnes & Noble and Books A Million exclusively. If you're used to going to other places and getting them, just focus in on Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. That's where to pick up the magazine this year. If you go online, it's philsteele.com. That's STEELE.com. You can get weekly newsletter. You can order the magazine right there, and you can even get the downloadable version to your computer. So all that available at philsteele.com. Just head there, hit the store for the magazine and other features. But Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, your exclusive dealers this year.
Well, I can't wait to head there soon and pick up my 2021 preview. It's going to be going with me, Phil. First of all, at the beach. I got a beach trip coming up in mid-July, and then it'll be at Bryant-Denny Stadium all over the SEC. I always keep it with me throughout the season. Just thank you for the great work that you put in, and thank you once again for visiting with us now 2 summers in a row here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. We really appreciate it.
Hey, Roger, it was great talking football with you once again. I enjoyed the conversation greatly.
Yeah, this time of the year, we're missing college football. We're missing college sports. Last night the College World Series wrapped up. You're kind of getting ready for what's coming up, and there's nothing better than that Phil Steele magazine to really go in-depth in all the previews, taking a look at the 2 deeps of all of the teams across the SEC, Power 5 conferences, Group of 5, all over the place. Really a great book, and again, you can pick it up, philsteele.com, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million have them as well. We're going to wrap up this edition of Crimson Drive today talking about something else that's coming up soon, the Tokyo Olympics. And Alabama will be well represented at the Olympics, especially in swimming and diving, as Alabama is sending 3 current swimmers to the Olympic teams, and also Ryan White is on Team USA. We can't wait to watch her compete for Team USA. So we figured it was a good time to introduce you to Margo Geer. She is the new swimming and diving head coach here at the University of Alabama, and she joins us next on Crimson Drive, presented by Coca-Cola. And we're joined now by the new coach for swimming and diving at the University of Alabama, Margo Geer, who joins us from Tuscaloosa. But I know, Coach, you've been quite busy over the past few weeks. How's everything going?
It's good. It's good. Thanks, Roger. Yeah, we've had an exciting past couple of weeks here away out in Omaha for Olympic trials. But yeah, it's been an exciting time. But definitely good. It feels good to be back and be in Alabama for sure.
And what are the Olympic trials like for you now as a coach? You went through it before as an athlete, but now as a coach, are the emotions a little different?
Absolutely, they are. And I would say I was probably more nervous watching as a coach than I ever was for myself. But yes, it was absolutely very exciting. So much energy. Having 14 people at the trials was awesome for Wave 2. So we had a strong team presence. It was really fun to watch some really strong performances. And I think as a staff, we were just having a lot of fun, having a lot of excitement in the stands, especially, off of a couple of those performances. So yeah, definitely a different experience, but had an incredible time.
Well, and Ryan White really had an incredible time for Alabama, making the U.S. national team in the 100 and 200 backstroke. What can you tell us about the time that she had in Omaha?
Well, Ryan's someone who's really been coming on the past couple years here. I think for a lot of people, maybe they thought it was kind of out of nowhere, but for us, we've been excited about Ryan for a while, and I think her work that she's done with Coach Ozzie here in the past couple months, she really made some strides, and I think in Omaha, it just kind of all came together, and she was able to just really show her stuff and do it on the biggest stage. So super happy for her. She's definitely put in, a lot of hard work, a lot of time, a lot of focus, and she knew what she wanted going into the meet, and she made it happen. So that's awesome for her. And we're really happy for her as a staff.
What are some of her biggest strengths as a swimmer?
I would say kind of just what I was saying, her attention to detail, her level of focus. When she's decided on something, she really commits herself to it. I think she's willing to pay the price for whatever it takes to be great. And she really wants to be great, which is, what we're all about here at Alabama, and especially on the swimming and diving scene. I think, she understands what it takes and she's willing to do it. And I think, as a coach, that's someone you want to coach, right? That's someone you want to be around and help develop. And so she's really coming into her own, and she's got more in her. I think, we've touched on trials, but she's definitely got some more to put out there, and some more performances that I think she'll have here in the next couple weeks.
Well, NBC televising the Olympics always does a great job telling the stories of these athletes who are now living out their dreams. What are fans going to learn about Ryan White kind of away from the pool? What's she like, her personality, and any interesting stories that may be coming out about her?
Ryan's from Utah, so she's a little ways from home. I think she's a big family person. She's definitely, close with her tight circle. And so for her, I think she's, I don't know if there's anything too wild, but we talked about just, she's someone who really wants to take it to the next level. And so outside of the pool, I think she's pretty much dedicated, everything she's doing here to making it to the Olympics, to winning medals and things like that. So she's one dedicated lady. And I think, I was talking with her at the meet, and I was saying, they're asking me all these, things about you, and, what's something that no one knows about Ryan and things like that. So we kind of laughed about that, because I feel like she's pretty, it's pretty clear what she wants and what she's going to do to get it. So.
Well, the trial is such an amazing time for all of Alabama's athletes. As you mentioned, you took 14 to Omaha. What can you tell us about Tyler Sesfold? Had a miss last year, but came back and had a really strong showing this week.
Yeah, Tyler's a very, very interesting case here. He got a little bit of a operation done on his shoulder. Was kind of battling back from some injuries this past year. Did not compete. He actually hadn't competed for, I think it was somewhere around, over a year and a half. So he had done some stuff in practice leading up to trials, where we were thinking, okay, he might be in good enough shape to go to the meet. And then for him to get there and even, make the semis, make the finals. Those are the cool moments in the sport, where you see, he's definitely had some, some hard times here in the past year and a half, but for him to come back and have ended the summer the way he did, I think that's pretty telling of his character and kind of, his work ethic and what he's willing to do to come out of those hard spots. So once again, very happy for him. I think, he's someone who definitely, could have helped us out this year from the team aspect, but glad he's back and able to perform in that way.
Two other athletes I wanted to touch on. What can you tell us about the performances of the trials by Cora as well as Kinsey McMahon?
Yeah, I'll start with Cora. Cora's she also had a pretty interesting year. She's kind of battling some different things as well, some injuries and whatnot. So she's really had a pretty solid block of work here the past couple of months. I think Coach James has done a great job working with her and getting her in peak condition. So for her to make it back to semifinals, to be in that elite field with some other sprinters was awesome. I think she had done a really good job at SECs and NCAAs, but for her to kind of do that in the long course pool and start to make a name for herself in the summer, I think is awesome. And hopefully look for her to be on, some national teams and some different things here coming up in the next couple years. Kinsey McMahon was also had some great swims at trials. I know she's coming off of a strong year for her also from SECs and NCAAs. She definitely, she was able to race Katie Ledecky and some people that she hadn't really gone head to head with before. And I think it was a great experience for her. I think she would have liked to have been a little bit faster and maybe, had some a little bit better swims at night. But I think overall, wonderful experience for her and definitely someone who's going to, keep putting herself in position to be on national teams moving forward for sure.
You all took 14 Alabama swimmers to Omaha for the trials. Do you prepare those athletes like you would for the SEC or NCAA meets, or is it a little different for an event like this?
That's a good question. I got asked that actually by someone recently. And I think, in terms of physical preparation, a lot of it kind of stayed the same. I mean, of course, we're getting ready for something that's more of a long course meet, something that involves more of prelims and semifinals and finals. So I think from that side of things, it's a little bit of a longer meet you have to prepare for. We were there for I think it was over 10 days. So it's definitely a longer event, a longer competition than you're used to. But I feel like most of the preparation that was different was definitely the mental side of things, talking about, just what this opportunity means and how, this is such a rare competition. It doesn't happen every year. So really, diving into the history of the Olympics and the Olympic trials. And I think from that side of things, we were definitely trying to prepare them as much as we could for going into battle as a team and trying to make it, a team sort of deal, even though when you get there, it is a little bit of an individual performance. But I would say preparations were geared towards the trials, but also in many ways, we're trying to go out there and dominate. And I think that's across the board, whether it's SECs or NCAAs or Olympic trials. So a little bit of a difference, but also a lot of the same messages.
Yeah, the trials and then the Olympics really capping what has been a very busy 2020 to 2021 season for Alabama swimming. Is there just any way to really put this past year in perspective, all the ups and downs that we saw along the way?
Hard to put into words. I think if you ask the team, they'd probably feel the same way. It's something, if you were in it, you understood, but if not, you might not. And I think that's kind of how we created a pretty strong bond this year, going through some things and dealing with hard times and dealing with challenging situations. And hard to put into words, but I think overall, I'm super proud of how the team's handled everything. I think as a staff, I'm very grateful to have the people that I have around me. I think we've done a very, very good job of keeping each other, accountable for what we want to do, but also, being, compassionate with each other and making sure that we're all, doing okay throughout the year. So yes, it's been a crazy ride this year.
I'm sure it has been. And what can you tell us about the job that Ozzie has done as the interim head coach now as you get ready to take the reins for this fall?
Well, Ozzie, this whole program, should have a lot of, thankfulness towards Ozzie. I think he really got the job done. He's really followed through with everything he needed to do from January till now. So I couldn't be more, like I said, grateful and happy to have him, in the role that he had, but also for him to come back and be a part of the staff. So yeah, Ozzie's been amazing, and obviously, he's had some tremendous success with his group and the people that he coaches every day. But also, the team as a whole has really enjoyed his leadership, and I think it's going to be great to have him in the upcoming season as well.
What excites you the most about your first year as a full-time head coach coming up once Alabama is able to compete once again?
probably most excited to honestly work with the team day to day. I think being on deck, getting to just get to know each individual, get to know, a little bit about them, their background, where they come from, what they're looking for, what they want to do. I think as a team, we have a lot of, aspirations. We've got some high goals, definitely want to, perform at the highest level, but also getting to know each person and kind of what makes them tick. I think that's my favorite part probably is the personal aspect and talking with each of the individuals.
Well, Coach, you and the staff have done a remarkable job with Alabama swimming, getting the women a program best 5th at NCAAs, another top 15 finish for the men's teams, now sending 3 swimmers to the Olympics. You just got to be tremendously proud of all the progress we've seen and what's ahead. But thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon on Crimson Drive. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Well, a big thank you to Coach Geer for joining us. We can't wait to see her team back in action and watch all Alabama Olympians coming up in the Tokyo Games, and get full coverage available on RolledTide.com, not just in swimming and diving, but track and field, golf, all the sports, all the coverage can be found on our website at RolledTide.com. This is going to wrap up this edition of Crimson Drive presented to you by Coca-Cola, and we do have a programming note. This is our 26th episode in a row. Our first one was previewing the national championship game against Ohio State all the way back in January, and now we are taking our first summer break. So the next 2 weeks, Thursday at 2 p.m. on the Crimson Tide Sports Network Facebook page, you will not see a new edition of Crimson Drive, as we will be off for the next 2 shows. But I do want to tell you that coming up on Thursday, July 22nd, we will be back at 2 p.m. Central with another edition of Crimson Drive presented by Coca-Cola, as we will have a lot of coverage from SEC football media days, including some comments from head coach Nick Saban, hopefully some student athletes, as well as we start to get ready for the college football season. And once the show does return, that's going to be really the focus coming up, is gearing you up for Alabama football, as well as all the other fall sports that are coming back on campus here at the Capstone. So again, our next show will be coming to you on Thursday, July 22nd. So enjoy Independence Day weekend with your family and rest up. We've got a lot of Alabama sports coming down the road, but we will be taking the next 2 weeks off for a little bit of summer vacation. Big thank you to Ethan Carabin, our producer, for putting this show together. Thank you as well to Alabama men's basketball head coach Nate Oats, also Phil Steele, college football expert. Make sure you check out his new guide that's available for this year, previewing the college football season. And the last coach we heard from, Coach Margo Geer of Alabama swimming and diving. For everybody at the University of Alabama and the Crimson Tide Sports Network, this is Roger Hoover saying thank you for watching Crimson Drive, presented to you by Coca-Cola. Have a great 4th of July weekend, and we'll see you down the road. Roll Tide, everybody.